Right, this is last year's cant. In fact, this is 2 years old. This is 2 years regrowth. Initially it was a little bit shaded, so I wasn't able to finish that bit over there, which I did last winter, so this was done 2 winters previously. This one I've left with the possibility of layering it. Layering is a way to produce more stalls without having to plant, and there's a couple of videos on the channel which show you how I do that. So if you look at that, that's now about between 7 and 8 feet tall, which is pretty good after 2 growing seasons. And that's with no deer. This is a 10x Dorset gate. This is a plastic mesh fence called 10x, which I use with the dead hedges. And this is last year's dead hedge. And that gives you an idea of how tall it needs to be to keep Bambi out. And there's a lot of ash regeneration just in here, all in these open areas, and that's all nice and tall and straight and growing on to become quite nice little saplings if it survives ash dieback disease. Now let's compare these with some stalls over here which were cut by my neighbours 3 years ago, possibly 4 with some of them, and they didn't protect the stalls. So this is what happens, and you can see this one, it's less than knee high. That's extraneous. And you can see it's been nibbled here. See where it's been nibbled off, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here several times. Because basically these are the bits that the deer love, especially in the spring when the sap's rising. They're full of sugars because the root system just after it's cut is still entirely intact. We question whether it's still entirely intact now because it will have been starved of nutrient, because this isn't producing very much in the way of photosynthate because the deer keep eating it. That stall's surviving. This one here is doing a lot worse. See these bits here? I've basically gone through with a chainsaw and I've recut this because I kept tripping over it. And you see that it's died and rotted. And this may well have been alive when it was initially cut. These bits here are still alive, and I'll leave those because it's had enough insults. So that's deer browsing, and these ones over here suffered the same fate. This stuff is wood spurge, it's a euphorbia. It produces very acrid sap, so the deer don't eat that. Basically someone came down here in a tractor, knocked some of those off, and also I've probably knocked a few off walking backwards and forwards. See, this was a big old stall, and this is again less than knee high after 3 or even 4 years. Same with these, same with that, same with that, but this one has got away because it was underneath this rack of brash, and this stall here shows it very nicely. A bit nearest the brash where Bambi couldn't get in, gone away after some initial nibbling, but this bit on the left has been nibbled and hasn't got away. If the deer keep getting access to this, it might eventually get above browse height, but some of the stalls will die before that happens. Sika, remember, and also muntjac, which are probably here, are non-natives. Roe deer is a native, they are here, but up until the years between the wars, roe deer have been absent from these areas for a very long time. They're basically hunted out and only subsisted in a few in parked areas, deer parks. But between the wars, some of them got out, and after World War II, a lot of the old deer parks were no longer maintained and they escaped, got back into the countryside, which may or may not be a good thing. but there's certainly the deer are having a lot of effects on woodlands in this area. And the question is, should deer be managed? Should it be coordinated centrally? Should they be managed as a resource, or are they just wildlife to be looked at and admired? If there is no other way of maintaining populations or keeping a lid on populations, suppressing populations, and they start eating farmers' crops, like grass in these fields, which I've seen happening, is that an issue? If they get to such a stage where, given a bit of drought, populations are so large that they get strapped for food and they start getting diseases, is that an issue? Something which I think needs thinking about. And I think the people that govern us, the people we elect to manage our lives and to make decisions and to think for us long term, should be thinking about. And apparently at the moment they are not. I think this is a bad thing. Feel free to discuss.